The first warning came not from deep space sensors or military satellites, but from a quantum anomaly detected by Dr. Rachel Thompson's Experimental Communication Array at the Global Defense Initiative's primary research facility in Colorado. The massive holographic display flickered with an ominous pattern of alien signatures that defied conventional understanding. "They're coming," she muttered, her fingers dancing across the quantum interface. Major Jake Rodriguez stood behind her, his muscular frame tense with years of military conditioning. Unlike Thompson's theoretical approach, he was a man of action, a veteran of the lunar conflict who had seen humanity's previous brushes with extraterrestrial encounters. "How long?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that cut through the facility's controlled ambient noise. Thompson pulled up a series of complex mathematical projections. 12 days, possibly 13. The Kral Imperium's approach vector suggests they're not interested in communication. This is a full-scale invasion. The holographic display transformed, showing a terrifyingly precise visualization of the approaching alien fleet. Thousands of biomechanical ships, each the size of small cities, moved with a precision that suggested more than mere technological advancement. They'd move like a single, living organism. Rodriguez knew the history. The Kral had already consumed 17 different civilizations in the past century. Their technological superiority was legendary, their military strategy ruthless. They didn't conquer, they assimilated or destroyed. "Our conventional defense systems won't even slow them down," Thompson said, her voice devoid of emotional speculation. She was stating a fact, not expressing fear. The facility around them hummed with a nervous energy. Scientists and military personnel moved with a controlled urgency that spoke of years of preparation for this moment. The Global Defense Initiative wasn't just a military organization, it was humanity's last line of defense. "So what's the plan?" Rodriguez asked, knowing full well that Thompson wouldn't have called him here without a radical strategy. She pulled up a complex quantum algorithm that looked more like an abstract piece of art than a defensive strategy. Intricate connections pulsed with an almost living quality, billions of potential interactions mapped out in microscopic detail. "Silence," Thompson said simply. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Silence. Not just silence. A global, synchronized quantum resonance. Every human becoming a single, unified computational node. Will transform the entire planet into the most sophisticated communication and defense network ever conceived. The plan was audacious, impossible, by most scientific standards. But Rodriguez had learned long ago that impossible was just a word used by people who lacked imagination. "You're talking about turning every human into a living computer," he said, not as a challenge, but as a clarification. Thompson nodded. "Not just a computer. A consciousness, a collective intelligence that can process information and respond faster than any technological system the Kral have ever encountered." Outside the facility's reinforced windows, the Colorado landscape remained unchanged. Mountains stood as silent witnesses to humanity's most ambitious defensive strategy. No one would know the true nature of what was coming, or humanity's response. "We'll need global cooperation," Rodriguez said. "Every government, every individual." "Already in motion," Thompson replied. Her fingers moved across the interface, revealing a global network of quantum communication nodes already being activated in secret. Military installations, research centers, even civilian communication networks were being subtly reconfigured. The transformation would be invisible, seamless. A planet preparing its most sophisticated defense by appearing to do absolutely nothing. Rodriguez studied the complex projections. Each human would remain outwardly normal. No one would know they were part of something extraordinary. The Kral would approach expecting conventional resistance, military formations, weapon systems, traditional defensive strategies. Instead, they would find something entirely unprecedented. "When do we begin?" Rodriguez asked. Thompson's lips curved into the first genuine smile he had seen from her in months. "We've already started." The quantum array pulsed with a soft, almost musical frequency. Somewhere, across the planet, the first nodes of humanity's collective consciousness began to awaken. Silence was about to become humanity's most powerful weapon. Would you like me to continue with the next part or elaborate on any specific aspect of this expanded introduction? Fleet Commander Vornak of the Krull Imperium studied the holographic representation of the Earth system with a mixture of professional calculation and growing confusion. His tentacular appendages moved across the navigation interface, recalibrating sensors that seemed to be malfunctioning. "Explain," he demanded of his senior science analyst, a crystalline being named Zarek, whose computational capabilities were renowned throughout the Imperium. Zarek's translucent form shifted with what could only be described as academic frustration. "Commander, we are detecting zero conventional defensive preparations. No missile systems charging. No energy weapon signatures. No communication networks being fortified. It's unprecedented." The bridge of the primary Krull mothership was a marvel of biomechanical engineering. Organic computational interfaces merged with metallic structures, creating an environment that was simultaneously alive and mechanical. Hundreds of crew members from various subjugated species worked in perfect, terrified synchronization. Vornak's species had conquered civilizations for millennia. They understood resistance. They knew how lesser species responded to impending destruction. Panic, desperate communication, futile military preparations. Earth did none of these things. "Complete sensor sweep," Vornak ordered, his multitonal voice resonating through the ship's living communication matrix. Zarek complied. Trillion terabyte scanning waves washed over the Earth system, penetrating atmospheric layers, scanning communication spectrums, analyzing every possible defensive signature. Nothing. "It's impossible," muttered Sub-Commander Krolax, a veteran of 17 planetary conquests. "No species simply waits." Vornak's complex neural network processed multiple scenarios simultaneously. Each potential strategy was computed, analyzed, and discarded. The humans were doing something so far outside standard invasion response protocols that it defied computational prediction. "They're broadcasting nothing," Zarek reported. "Literally zero external communication. Major population centers remain at normal activity levels. No mass evacuations. No emergency protocols." On the massive view screen, Earth looked almost serene. Blue oceans, green continents, orbital satellites continuing their routine trajectories. It was as if the planet was unaware of the massive invasion fleet now entering its outer solar system. Krolax grew increasingly agitated. This could be a trap. What kind of trap involves doing nothing? Zarek responded, his crystalline form pulsing with analytical energy. Vornak's decision-making process was legendary within the Imperium. He had conquered civilizations by being methodical, by understanding the psychological warfare inherent in every potential conflict. This was something entirely different. "Scan for quantum anomalies," he instructed Zarek. "Check for any non-standard communication frequencies." The science analyst's computational tendrils spread across multiple scanning interfaces. Complex algorithms searched for the slightest deviation from standard communication patterns. Again, nothing. "Commander," Zarek said, "I'm detecting something unusual. Microscopic quantum fluctuations, but they're so subtle, so perfectly synchronized, that they're almost indistinguishable from background radiation." Vornak's neural pathways sparked with a sensation closest to what humans might call intrigue. The Krull had conquered hundreds of civilizations. They had encountered species that resisted through military might, through technological innovation, through desperate last-stand strategies. But a species that responded to an imminent invasion by becoming silent. "Prepare initial invasion protocols," Vornak commanded, "but proceed with maximum caution." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Caution was not typically part of the Krull invasion strategy. They were known for overwhelming force, for total and immediate subjugation. Something about Earth was different. As the massive invasion fleet continued its approach, a profound quiet seemed to emanate from the blue planet. No signals, no resistance, just waiting. Vornak couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that they were walking into something far beyond their comprehensive understanding. The humans were doing something extraordinary by doing absolutely nothing at all. Would you like me to continue with Part 3, maintaining this level of depth and engagement? In a nondescript research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Rachel Thompson completed the final calibration of the global quantum network. The room was a marvel of technological minimalism: white walls, minimalist interfaces, and a central quantum core that looked more like an abstract art installation than a revolutionary communication system. Activation sequence initiating, she murmured, her fingers moving with surgical precision across holographic interfaces. Major Jake Rodriguez stood nearby, watching a series of global monitors. Each screen showed different parts of the world: cities, rural landscapes, research centers, all seemingly unchanged. But beneath the surface, something extraordinary was happening. The quantum network wasn't just a communication system. It was a living, breathing computational matrix that would transform every human into a potential node of collective intelligence. Thompson's algorithm was the result of decades of research, combining quantum entanglement, neural network theory, and a revolutionary understanding of human consciousness. What looked like simple silence was actually the most sophisticated communication system ever conceived. Activation at 37%, a computer voice announced. In Tokyo, a subway worker paused mid-stride, her consciousness momentarily connecting to the global network. In Sao Paulo, a street vendor experienced a fleeting moment of expanded awareness. In Moscow, a university professor felt a subtle shift in perception that lasted less than a heartbeat. Most wouldn't even realize what was happening. How many know the full extent of the plan? Rodriguez asked. Thompson smiled slightly. Exactly 7 people. Myself. You. 4 senior global leadership representatives. And 1 quantum systems architect in Beijing. The quantum core began to pulse with a soft, almost musical frequency. Each pulse represented millions of microscopic connections being established simultaneously across the globe. It wasn't just a communication network, it was a living organism of collective human potential. The Krull won't understand, Thompson explained. Their technological paradigm is based on hierarchical communication, centralized systems, command structures. We're creating something fundamentally different. A distributed intelligence that can adapt faster than any centralized system. Rodriguez understood the military implications immediately. We're turning the entire human population into a single adaptive computational system. More than that, Thompson corrected. We're creating a consciousness that can process, adapt, and respond faster than any technological system in the universe. The quantum core continued its subtle pulsing. Each pulse represented millions of potential interactions, computational pathways that could be formed and reformed in microseconds. The human brain, long misunderstood, was about to become the most sophisticated computing system the galaxy had ever encountered. Activation at 62%, the computer announced. In military command centers around the world, senior officials who knew fragments of the plan watched their standard monitoring systems. Nothing appeared unusual. No alarms, no warnings, just a sense of anticipation that few could explain. Thompson's algorithm was elegantly simple in its complexity. Each human would remain outwardly normal. Their daily lives would continue unchanged. But underneath, a massive computational network was being established. The beauty is in its subtlety, she explained to Rodriguez. The Krull expect resistance. They expect traditional defensive systems. Instead, we're creating a defense mechanism they can't even comprehend. The quantum core began to generate complex mathematical patterns that would have looked like abstract art to an untrained eye. To Thompson, they were the early stages of a planetary defense system, unlike anything in human or alien history. Activation at 89%. the computer announced. Rodriguez watched the monitors. Cities continued their daily rhythms. People walked streets, worked in offices, lived their lives. Nothing seemed different. And yet, everything had changed. "Ready?" Thompson asked. Rodriguez nodded. "Ready." The quantum core pulsed one final time, a frequency so subtle, so perfectly calibrated, that it would be undetectable to any external scanning system. Humanity's most sophisticated weapon was now active, and it looked exactly like silence. Would you like me to continue with Part 4, maintaining this level of narrative depth and technological intrigue? The first signs of the quantum network's attack were so subtle that the Krull fleet systems barely registered them. Sub-Commander Krulax first noticed an infinitesimal fluctuation in their long-range communication arrays, a microsecond of interference that would have gone unnoticed by any less advanced system. "Zarek," he called out, "run a diagnostic on the primary communication matrix." The crystalline science analyst's computational tendrils spread across the ship's interface. At first, nothing seemed amiss. But then, like a cancer slowly consuming healthy tissue, the disruptions began to multiply. On the bridge of the lead Krull mothership, holographic displays started to shimmer and distort. Navigation systems began producing impossible calculations. Weapon targeting matrices developed inexplicable blind spots that seemed to move and shift like living things. "Commander," Zarek reported, his usually calm voice carrying a hint of concern, "we're experiencing systemic anomalies across multiple computational platforms." Vornak's multi-part neural network began to process the growing cascade of technological failures. In their 1,000-year history of galactic conquest, the Krull had never encountered a defense mechanism like this. Each disruption was perfectly calibrated, not a total system shutdown, which would have triggered immediate defensive protocols, but a series of microscopic interferences that slowly undermined the ship's technological integrity. Communication channels began to develop random noise, not enough to completely block transmission, but sufficient to create doubt. Navigation systems started to suggest impossible routing configurations. Weapon targeting became unreliable, with crosshairs shifting by microscopic degrees that would mean the difference between a precise strike and a complete miss. "It's like the entire system is breathing," Krulax muttered, watching in horrified fascination as another targeting matrix developed an inexplicable blind spot. Back on Earth, Dr. Rachel Thompson watched the initial stages of the technological disruption through a complex quantum interface. Each microscopic interference was a carefully calculated mathematical algorithm, designed to undermine the Krull's technological superiority without triggering a full-scale defensive response. "We're not destroying their systems," she explained to Major Rodriguez. "We're making them question their own technological capabilities." The quantum network was performing surgical strikes against the most fundamental aspect of Krull technological supremacy, their belief in absolute computational control. On the mothership, Vornak realized they were facing something unprecedented. The disruptions weren't random. They were too perfect, too precise. Each system failure was like a carefully placed surgical cut, designed to create maximum psychological impact with minimal direct damage. "Calculate probability of external interference," Vornak commanded. Zarek's computational analysis returned a series of impossible results. The interference patterns suggested an intelligence that could adapt faster than their most advanced predictive algorithms. But there was no clear source, no traditional communication signatures, nothing that matched any known technological defense mechanism. "It's like we're being attacked by something that isn't there," Krulax said, a rare note of fear entering his voice. The quantum network was performing what could only be described as technological gaslighting. Each system failure was so subtle, so perfectly calibrated, that it created a growing sense of technological uncertainty. Weapon systems developed microscopic targeting errors. Communication channels developed random noise that made long-range coordination impossible. Navigation matrices began suggesting routing configurations that defied standard computational logic. Vornak understood the psychological warfare inherent in these attacks. It wasn't about destroying their technology. It was about making them question the very foundation of their technological superiority. "We're being challenged," he said quietly, "by a form of intelligence we don't understand." On Earth, Dr. Thompson watched the quantum network's progress with a sense of clinical satisfaction. Each microscopic interference was a perfectly calculated mathematical algorithm. The humans weren't fighting with traditional weapons. They were fighting with pure information, with the most sophisticated computational system ever conceived. The Krail fleet continued its approach, each system becoming increasingly unreliable. Not destroyed. Not completely non-functional. Just uncertain. And uncertainty, Thompson knew, was far more terrifying than any direct attack. Would you like me to continue with Part 5, maintaining this level of narrative complexity and technological intrigue? The growing technological uncertainties began to fracture the Krull Imperium's most fundamental psychological construct, their absolute faith in technological supremacy. What had always been their greatest strength was now becoming their most profound vulnerability. Fleet Commander Vornak watched as junior commanders began to show signs of unprecedented emotional responses. Anxiety, doubt, uncertainty. These were not states typically experienced by Krull military personnel who were genetically and technologically engineered for absolute psychological stability. "Report," he demanded of Sub-Commander Krulax, who was meticulously reviewing yet another series of computational anomalies. Krulax's response was uncharacteristically hesitant. "Commander, our systems are compromised, but not in any way we can definitively explain." The bridge of the mothership had transformed. Where once there was a symphony of confident computational interactions, now an underlying current of tension vibrated through the living biomechanical interfaces. Crew members from subjugated species, typically maintained in a state of absolute subservience, began to show microscopic signs of increased autonomy. Zarek, the crystalline science analyst, projected a series of diagnostic images that defied logical interpretation. Each visualization suggested multiple potential system failures, yet none could be conclusively proven. "It's as if our technology is questioning itself," Zarek said, his usually emotionless computational form displaying what could only be described as confusion. Vornak understood the profound implications. The Krail's entire civilization was built upon an unshakable belief in technological determinism. Their conquest of 17 different galactic civilizations had been predicated on the absolute certainty that their technological systems were infallible. Now that certainty was crumbling. The quantum disruptions weren't just technical, they were psychological. Each microscopic interference was carefully designed to create a cascading effect of doubt, not destruction. Doubt. On the lead mothership's lower decks, subjugated species began to exhibit behaviors that would have been instantaneously suppressed mere hours before. A maintenance worker from a conquered reptilian civilization paused mid-task, experiencing a momentary sense of agency. Another computational matrix developed an unexplainable routing configuration that suggested something impossible: independent decision-making. "We are being challenged," Vornak said quietly, "by a form of intelligence that attacks not our technology, but our understanding of technology." Back on Earth, Dr. Rachel Thompson watched the psychological deconstruction with clinical precision. The quantum network was doing something far more sophisticated than a traditional attack. It was dismantling the Krell's most fundamental belief system, their technological ideology. "We're not fighting them," she explained to Major Rodriguez. "We're making them fight themselves." The Major understood immediately. Military strategy had always been about creating psychological vulnerabilities. But this was something entirely different. They were using pure information as a weapon, transforming doubt into a computational virus that spread faster than any traditional attack. On the mothership, the first signs of internal conflict began to emerge. Junior commanders started questioning established protocols. computational systems began suggesting alternative decision-making matrices that directly challenged existing hierarchical structures. Zarek projected a series of increasingly bizarre computational scenarios. Navigation systems suggested impossible routing configurations. Weapon targeting matrices developed recursive loops of uncertainty. Communication channels began to develop what could only be described as personality. Our technology is becoming unreliable, Krelax reported, a rare note of emotional uncertainty in his voice. Vornak recognized the profound threat. The Krull had conquered civilizations by presenting an image of absolute technological superiority. Now that very superiority was being systematically dismantled by an intelligence they couldn't comprehend. The quantum network was performing psychological warfare at a level unprecedented in galactic history. Each microscopic interference was a carefully calculated algorithm designed to create maximum psychological impact with minimal direct intervention. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were fundamentally challenging the Krull's entire technological philosophy. And the most terrifying part, the attack looked exactly like doing nothing at all. Would you like me to continue with Part 6, maintaining this level of narrative complexity and technological intrigue? The moment of revelation came without warning, a sudden cascade of information that overwhelmed the Krull's computational systems in a way no traditional communication could ever achieve. Dr. Rachel Thompson's fingers hovered over the quantum interface, her eyes reflecting a mixture of scientific precision and something deeper, a profound understanding of human potential. Major Jake Rodriguez stood beside her, watching as humanity prepared to make its most extraordinary statement. "Transmission sequence initiating," Thompson murmured. On the Krull mothership, Fleet Commander Vornak felt the first wave of the transmission like a physical assault. It wasn't a traditional communication. It wasn't data in any conventional sense. It was something far more complex, a multidimensional tapestry of human experience that defied all existing computational frameworks. The transmission began with scientific discovery. Centuries of human innovation crashed through the Krull's communication barriers. Quantum mechanics breakthroughs, medical revelations, technological innovations that seemed to emerge from pure creative potential. Algorithms that solved problems the Krull had considered unsolvable. Mathematical proofs that rewrote fundamental understanding of universal principles. But it wasn't just scientific data. Artistic expressions followed. Symphonies that contained mathematical complexity beyond the Krull's comprehension. Paintings that encoded multiple layers of information. Literature that served as both emotional expression and computational algorithm. Each piece of art was simultaneously a creative work and a complex information system. "What is this?" Krelax whispered, his computational form vibrating with an emotion closest to awe. The transmission shifted. Moments of human connection flooded the Krull systems, a mother's love for her child, the bond between soldiers in conflict, the connection between strangers helping each other during a natural disaster. These weren't just emotional experiences. They were complex computational models of cooperation, empathy, and collective survival. Zarek, the crystalline science analyst, found his computational systems overwhelmed. The transmission wasn't just information. It was a living, breathing representation of human potential. Scenes of human resilience followed. A child surviving impossible medical conditions. Communities rebuilding after devastating natural disasters. Individual acts of courage that defied all logical computational analysis. Each moment was a complex algorithm of survival, adaptation, and hope. The Krull had conquered 17 civilizations. They understood technological superiority. They understood military might. They had never understood this. Vornak watched as his most advanced computational systems struggled to process the transmission. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't a defense. It was a complete reimagining of what intelligence could be. "They're showing us everything," he said quietly. The transmission continued. Scientific discoveries merged with artistic expression. Moments of individual triumph intertwined with collective human experience. Mathematical algorithms danced with emotional narratives. Each second of the transmission was a complex, multidimensional representation of human potential. The Krail's technological supremacy began to crumble under the weight of this impossible communication. On Earth, Dr. Thompson monitored the transmission with clinical precision. "We're not just defending," she explained to Rodriguez. "We're redefining the concept of intelligence." The Major understood. This wasn't a traditional communication. This was humanity's most profound statement about its own potential. On the mothership, computational systems began to transform. Weapon matrices became unable to process their original functions. Navigation systems developed recursive loops of creativity. Communication channels started generating their own artistic expressions. The Krail were experiencing something unprecedented, a complete transformation of their understanding of intelligence, communication, and potential. "We are being changed," Vornak said, a note of wonder entering his typically emotionless voice. The transmission continued. Humanity's entire collective experience, scientific, artistic, emotional, mathematical, flowing through the Krail's most advanced computational systems, and at its core, a simple, profound message. "We are more than you can comprehend." The loud moment of absolute silence had become humanity's most extraordinary statement. Would you like me to continue with Part 7, maintaining this level of narrative complexity and thematic depth? The first diplomatic communication from the Krail came not through traditional channels, but as a quantum resonance that seemed to vibrate with a mixture of confusion, respect, and something remarkably close to humility. Major Jake Rodriguez stood in the Global Defense Initiative's primary negotiation chamber, a space designed to be both intimidating and welcoming. Sleek technological interfaces merged with deliberately neutral design elements, creating an environment that suggested both strength and openness. Dr. Rachel Thompson sat beside him, her computational systems still humming from the massive transmission that had fundamentally altered the Krail's understanding of intelligence. "They're requesting direct communication," Rodriguez said, studying the quantum interface that flickered with complex algorithmic patterns. Thompson nodded. "Not a demand, a request." The distinction was crucial. Every previous alien encounter had been characterized by demands, by show of technological force. This was something entirely different. Fleet Commander Vornak's quantum signature appeared, not as a traditional holographic projection, but as a complex mathematical representation that seemed to breathe and shift with each computational cycle. "Humanity," the transmission began. "We require clarification." Rodriguez suppressed a slight smile. The most advanced technological civilization in the known galaxy was essentially asking for an explanation. Thompson's fingers moved across the interface, calibrating a response that would communicate without overwhelming. "Clarification about what?" She responded, her mathematical language precise and measured. The Krail's response was complex. It wasn't just a communication. It was a multidimensional exploration of their newfound uncertainty. They had approached Earth expecting a traditional conquest. Instead, they had been fundamentally transformed by a communication method that defied all their existing computational frameworks. "Your transmission," Vornak's quantum signature pulsed, "was not a defense, not an attack. It was something we cannot categorize." Rodriguez understood the profound implications. Humanity had done something far more sophisticated than resist. They had forced the Krail to reconsider their entire understanding of intelligence, communication, and potential. The negotiation chamber became a crucible of potential galactic transformation. "We offered understanding," Thompson responded, "not conflict." The Krail's computational systems seemed to hesitate, a response so unprecedented that it would have been unimaginable moments before. Their entire civilization was built on technological determinism, on the absolute certainty of their computational superiority. Now that certainty had been systematically dismantled. Zarek, the crystalline science analyst who had been part of the invasion fleet, emerged as a primary communication node. His quantum signature suggested something remarkable, a willingness to learn, to understand, rather than to conquer. "We require context," Zarek's transmission indicated. Rodriguez looked at Thompson. They both understood the historical magnitude of this moment. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was fundamentally reimagining first contact. The negotiation wasn't about territory. It wasn't about resources. It was about understanding. Thompson began to transmit a carefully constructed narrative. Not just data, but a complex, multidimensional representation of human potential. Scientific discoveries merged with artistic expressions. Moments of individual triumph intertwined with collective human experience. The Krull computational systems absorbed the transmission with what could only be described as academic fascination. Your intelligence is non-linear. Vornak's signature pulsed. It was the closest thing to a compliment the Krull had ever offered a species they had previously considered for conquest. Rodriguez recognized the profound shift. The Krull weren't just requesting information. They were requesting perspective. Their entire technological paradigm had been systematically challenged by humanity's quantum transmission. We offer collaboration. Thompson responded, not submission. The words hung in the quantum space between them, a revolutionary concept for a civilization built on hierarchical conquest. The negotiation chamber became silent, but it was a different kind of silence. Not the tactical silence of their initial defense, but the pregnant silence of potential transformation. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had defeated the most technologically advanced civilization in the galaxy not through force, but through a profound demonstration of their own complex, non-linear potential. And the conversation was just beginning. Would you like me to continue with the final part 8, maintaining this level of narrative complexity and thematic depth? The aftermath of humanity's extraordinary encounter with the Krull Imperium would be recorded as a pivotal moment in galactic history, not as a conquest, not as a defeat, but as a fundamental reimagining of interspecies communication and potential. In the months following the initial contact, the Global Defense Initiative became the unexpected center of a new form of diplomatic engagement. Representatives from the Krull arrived not as conquerors, but as students. Their massive motherships transformed into research vessels, orbiting Earth with a mixture of technological fascination and genuine intellectual curiosity. Dr. Rachel Thompson found herself at the center of a transformation she had only theoretically imagined. The quantum communication network that had been humanity's defense mechanism became something far more profound, a bridge between two fundamentally different forms of intelligence. We're not just sharing information, she explained to Major Jake Rodriguez during a strategy briefing. We're creating an entirely new model of galactic interaction. The Krull's approach to humanity changed completely. Fleet Commander Vornak, once a symbol of technological conquest, became a primary advocate for a new collaborative model of galactic exploration. The 17 civilizations they had previously conquered were gradually offered opportunities for restoration and independent development. Zarek, the crystalline science analyst, became a primary diplomatic liaison. His computational systems had been fundamentally altered by humanity's quantum transmission, transformed from a tool of conquest into a mechanism of genuine exploration and understanding. The quantum network developed beyond its initial defensive purpose. Scientists from around the world began to explore its potential. It wasn't just a communication system. It was a living, adaptive intelligence that could process information in ways previously unimaginable. Global research centers became hubs of unprecedented collaboration. Krull technological experts worked alongside human scientists, each learning from the other's fundamentally different approach to understanding the universe. Major Rodriguez oversaw the initial diplomatic and security protocols. The military strategy shifted from defensive preparation to collaborative exploration. Humanity had proven that their greatest strength wasn't technological superiority, but adaptability, creativity, and a profound capacity for collective intelligence. We didn't defeat them. Rodriguez often explained to incoming diplomatic teams. We showed them a different way of existing. The Krull's technological systems began to incorporate elements of human creativity. Mathematical models became more fluid, computational approaches more adaptive. The rigid hierarchical structure of their civilization started to transform, influenced by humanity's non-linear approach to intelligence. Dr. Thompson's quantum communication network became the foundation of a new galactic communication protocol. It wasn't just a technological system. It was a living, adaptive intelligence that could bridge fundamentally different forms of consciousness. Diplomatic meetings became extraordinary events, where once there would have been displays of technological might. Now there were complex, multidimensional exchanges of knowledge, art, scientific discovery, and collective experience. The 17 previously conquered civilizations began to receive unprecedented support for restoration and independent development. The Krail's approach transformed from conquest to collaborative exploration. Intelligence is not about control, Vornak began to explain to his own species. It's about potential. Global cultural exchanges became common. Krail artistic expressions began to incorporate human creative approaches. Human scientists explored computational models that merged technological precision with creative potential. The quantum network continued to evolve. It became a living testament to humanity's most profound capabilities, the ability to adapt, to understand, to transform. Rodriguez and Thompson watched as their initial defensive strategy became something far more significant. They hadn't just defended Earth. They had fundamentally changed the paradigm of galactic interaction. "We showed them," Thompson said quietly, "that intelligence is more than computational power. It's about connection." The massive Krull motherships that had once represented potential destruction now orbited Earth as research vessels, symbols of a new form of galactic collaboration. Humanity's loudest statement had been made in absolute silence, and the universe would never be the same. Would you like me to provide any additional context or explore any specific aspect of this final part of the story?